Hello and welcome to another Inner Core Tai-Chi video. My name is Kane Yenser, and today I'm going to be talking about a very important subject, and that is separation. And a lot of people get confused or don't dive deep enough into the subject to understand it. They kind of just think of separating weight. Okay, and separating weight in the legs, for example, is something you tell the beginners to start to let them discover what actual separation is. But it doesn't stop with just separation of weight in the legs. And what I mean by that is, for example, if I get into a bow posture from Jianmanqing's form, in the beginning, students are told 70% of your weight is in the front, 30% is in the back. All right? And this allows them to start to dive into the subject of separation, because in Tai-Chi, separation is everything. You can see it in the symbol of the Tai-Chi symbol, or the symbol that has the yin and the yang in it. By the way, it's not called a yin-yang symbol, it's called a Tai-Chi symbol, or a Tai-Chi tool, okay? And you can see in that symbol that it's clearly distinguished yin and yang, or black and white, okay? And that's a perfection of the idea. That's like, if you look at it, it's perfect. Everything's perfectly separated. Everything's perfectly even. So if you don't have separation, what happens is the yin and the yang, they don't separate and they fuse, they come together. And if you can imagine that in the symbol, it would be just gray, okay? So in order to be doing Tai-Chi, you actually have to have that separation of yin and yang, or shi and shu, okay? Full and empty. But you start with the idea of separating the weight, okay? And separation is not in the legs. It manifests in the legs, but it's not in the legs. Where it's at is actually in the hip, and this is actually quite difficult to do, to get your hips so they actually separate. And you can easily see this in people's form when they're not actually separated, truly separated. And how you can tell is when they're doing their form, and I'm going to do some Jianmanqing movements. What you see is as they go backwards and forwards, here I'm doing it correctly, okay? And what you see is the coccyx always stays at the center of the structure, okay? It's always at the center of the mass. But when someone is not able to separate their hips, what happens is the coccyx just kind of stays in place, and where you get separated is in the upper body and in the legs. And that's a big no-no, because one of the major principles in Tai-Chi is unification of the upper and lower body. You don't want them to be separated. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about what separation in the hips is, and what's the key to developing that. So you need to get your hips open and loose. If you've ever taken my class, maybe you're a student watching this, you hear me talk about this all the time, but I don't know if other Tai-Chi people hear this all the time. It's hips, 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 hips. And hips are obviously part of the waist. And sometimes when I look in the classics, when they say the waist, I think they really mean the hips more than anything, okay? But the key to getting the hips open or loose or relaxed so they have play is at the coccyx. So that has to open up. That's the linchpin in the hips. If you don't condition the tissue around the coccyx to release and loosen, it doesn't matter what you do. The hips will not release. And the hips are at the center of the body, and it has a very strong influence on the rest of the body. I always say, liberate the hips, you liberate the rest of the body. Don't liberate the hips, you don't liberate the rest of the body. And I truly believe that. So what you need to focus on, and I'm going to go over how to do this, what's the process of doing this in the next video, or the video I make after this. What you need to focus on is getting the tissue here around the base of the spine to release and stretch. Now the tissue it doesn't need to release a lot, but it's actually quite hard to get at because it's at the center of the body, and it's one of the first things that starts to stiffen up as we get older. And that's one reason we start to lean forward, and our toes start to bow out like a duck when we walk. And you'll notice a lot of elderly people walk like this. And it all comes from this beginning of stiffening around the coccyx, and then it spreads to the rest of the body. And then the rest of the body becomes stiff because it's compensating for bad posture. Okay? So the takeaway is this: separation of weight is not actually Tai-Chi separation. That's for beginners to start to understand, because they're so used to standing like this, double weighted, and that's a big no-no if you've read the classics. But separation is not in the legs. It manifests in the legs, but it comes from separation in the hips and having the hips able to have enough play so that the coccyx can stay at the center of your structure as you go through the form or when you're doing push-ins or anything, standing, all of it. That coccyx has to be brought under the upper body and properly over the lower body so that the upper body does not oscillate back and forth and the lower legs do not oscillate back and forth in opposite direction, canceling out where you're trying to send your energy and how you're trying to do your application. So what I suggest for you to do is go online and just type in people doing the form, especially Zhemanqing's form, and just watch their coccyx. Don't watch the rest of their body. See if the coccyx is moving back and forth, if it's getting travel back and forth, and if it's turning, and if the hips are able to square off. Okay, that's a dead giveaway with really stiff hips. Then I suggest you go look at Zhemanqing's form, and especially Ben Lo's form. Ben Lo was a student of Zhemanqing, and his form is beautiful. Okay, he's a little harder to find, but you can find him on my channel. One of my first videos I posted, and just watch him do his form and pay attention to his coccyx. All right, it becomes very obvious, and then videotape yourself and see if you're making the same mistakes. Okay, so in the next video, I'm going to go over how to address the problem. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully you'll join me. Please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them down in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.